Hey, Changemaker! Welcome to Rethink Social Change Podcast, a show dedicated to helping social change practitioners improve the way they make change happen to achieve tangible and sustained impact. I'm your host, Ratiba Sharif. I've worked with some of the world's leading social change organizations for more than 2 decades on 4 continents to help them design better projects, learn from them, and measure their results. Using Rethink Social Change cards, I will challenge changemakers like yourself to share their experience on what worked, what didn't, and why, in a very unique way. I will shuffle the deck of 54 Rethink Social Change cards and randomly draw 4 cards that will guide our conversation. So if you're ready for unscripted, jargon-free stories from the field, let's dive into today's episode. My guest today is joining us from Sousa on the sunny coast of Tunisia. Jihed Haj Salem is a social scientist and researcher extraordinaire. His focus areas are social inclusion, conflict mitigation, and countering violent extremism in Tunisia and the larger MENA region. As an applied social researcher, he helps social change organizations assess the landscape of their interventions, monitor the context of their projects, and develop and implement tailored responses to improve the lives of those they serve. Can't wait to see what cards will guide my conversation with him. Let's welcome him in. Hi, Jihed.
Hi, Ratiba.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for the invite.
You're very welcome. You have a little 4-legged friend at the back in the background.
Okay. Do I have noise like in the background?
No, don't worry.
Okay.
It's very nice, yes. And it's nice and sunny still in
in
Tunis. So,
Hannibal, yeah,
Jihed,
exactly.
we're going to go and we're going to start the conversation. You know the drill. I will shuffle the cards, draw 3 cards, which I will show you, and I will draw 1 card, which I won't show you, that I will use later on in the conversation to go deeper. Okay? So I know you've been very busy. Are you working on specific projects?
Yeah, I'm working on a project. It's a study actually. It's a study of the digital space in Tunisia. So yeah, we are right now into it. Yeah, so
Okay.
it's a sort of an
Great.
assessment,
And it's taking you.
Yeah, it's a sort of an assessment, of digital space
Okay.
actors.
So I've got the cards, and I'm gonna just randomly draw. It's 1, 2, and 3. I didn't see them, and then I'll draw quickly the what I call a card, which is a card that will help me kind of move into the conversation a little bit more, kind of dig deeper later on. So I'm going to draw it here. You won't see it. Let me show you your cards. All right. So in terms of context, we have social context. All right.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about dynamics, structures. Okay. Think about all that.
Yeah.
In terms of change, we're talking policy change. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So this would be laws, policies. And then in terms of people, stakeholders, we have 8 actors. So depending on your experience, we're talking NGOs, CSOs, CBOs, community-based organizations, civil society organizations, working in the same location on the same issues. Okay?
Okay.
So those are our 3 cards. I'll repeat. Social context.
Yeah.
8 actors.
Yeah.
When we're working at the level of policy change. When we're trying to, our projects are attempting to change policies or contribute to transforming policies. Okay? Do they trigger any thoughts, any projects that you worked on that you want to share some about?
Okay, so yeah, policy change, 8 actors and communities. That's a little bit difficult. It's the policy change that makes it difficult because there aren't so many projects
Okay.
that I worked on that aimed at policy change starting from the community level.
Okay.
I remember, you know, uh, I
Mhm.
remember participating in the evaluation of Tadaim. So that's a USAID project
Mhm.
that was program. So that was running here in Tunisia between 20, I think 2017, 2018 to 2020, 2021. It's a big
Mm.
project in terms of budget,
Mhm.
etc. It's a $50 million project. The overall goal of the project was to support and enhance the decentralization process here in Tunisia, the local decentralization process, and improve local governance structures here in Tunisia. So they worked in multiple communities, I
Okay.
think 30 and some communities, and specifically they
Mhm.
worked with municipalities but also with civil society actors down in the community
Mhm.
level. So this project
Mhm.
ultimately had a policy change objective, which is to improve the ongoing decentralization process and improve local governance. Uh, when we say improve local governance, it means enhancing, the capabilities of local governance structures, mainly municipalities, but also
Mhm.
supporting new
Mhm.
regulations, that new decentralization
Mhm.
regulations, supporting the capabilities of municipalities to deliver public services at the local level, improving relationships and building relationships between local NGOs or local civil society actors and the local governance structures, etc. So this is a policy change,
Mhm.
and we have an aid actor,
Yeah.
which is USAID, and the implementing, organization, which is Deloitte. So we have both two big giant
Mm.
international aid actors, but we also
Mhm.
have local partners here in Tunisia, so NGOs and civil society actors, those sort of, I don't know if you could describe them as aid actors or not, because they are on the recipient end. So yeah, so at some
Yeah.
in some terms we can define them as aid
Mhm.
actors, and they were aiming for policy change, starting from the bottom up, because you want to change the policy of how
Mhm.
governance is being done here in the country, how public services are being, delivered, how strategies are being built, etc. So you do it from the local level, so
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
yeah, it's one of the rare projects where policy change, is being done initially from the bottom up, but you have also to work with the upper level,
Yeah.
upper institutional level, because
Mhm.
you have to work with the ministries, you have to work with the government of Tunisia, presidency of the government. You have to work with the higher level structures that are administering a lot of services that being served on the local level. For example, the general company
Mhm.
of electricity. Some of those companies, they are big, very
Mhm.
big, higher level structures. So yeah, so you have to somehow find the balance, tip a balance between, what the local governance structures and local civil society actors are requesting, what are their expectations, what do
Mhm.
they need, etc. How do they perceive the centralization process, and also, how that all is being perceived or being done by the higher level national structures. So, and that's
Yeah.
somehow hard, that's very
Mhm.
hard, because people between the local and the national level, they tend to have, you know conflicting, expectations, conflicting needs, conflicting interests, and especially the
Mhm.
most most difficult one is how to convince, because any decentralization process, any governance decentralization process, it requests at least a transfer of competence from a national structure to a local structure. So a national structure transfers some
Agree.
of its competence, to the local level, and with the competence of transfer of competence, that requires also a transfer of resources. because you cannot give someone some competence. You say you delegate a structure to do this or that, and you give it jurisdiction, and you don't give it resources. So you need to do it, in parallel. That's the main dynamic in doing any decentralization process and implementing any decentralization process. And it's so difficult to convince national level structures to delegate some of their jurisdiction, some of their competence, and ultimately to delegate some of their resources. And at some point they might see
Yeah.
that as a threat, to their power position or to their interests. So how you you run that, it's a little bit difficult, it's a little bit challenging. And I
Yeah.
think most of the challenges that actually hampered the effective implementation of a decentralization process in Tunisia. It comes up to that, higher level structures, they want to stick, national level structures, they want to stick and want to monopolize jurisdiction, competence, and resources, and they see any
Yeah.
transfer of competence or any transfer of resource as a threat, to their power position.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of information here, and I just wanted to unpack a few things in. So, it's a decentralization. It's about increasing participation in decision making at local
Yeah,
level, right? That's
yeah,
the whole point of today. Then, so basically, it's dynamics at the local level, and hoping that it will trickle up to
it's
the central
it's not
level
only
and vice versa.
participation.
You,
It's not only
okay.
participation,
What is it about then?
because
What?
yeah, that's one of the misconceptions, common misconceptions when coming to do decentralization programs. You cannot invite people to participate in something that wouldn't lead to anything. For example, if we invite people to a local planning meeting in XYZ municipality, when we invite them, we need to ensure them that their participation would lead to something, actually, would impact something. And in
Yes.
order in order that their participation would be actually effective, their municipalities, they need to have, the competence and the resources, to implement whatever it comes out of that planning meeting, and that's the problem.
Yes.
Sometimes we fuel participation only to the sake of participation. We invite people to participate, and that's it. It ends there. It doesn't lead to anything. We yeah, we engage them into 3 days planning sessions, etc., blah blah blah, etc., doing all of that collective brainstorming, etc. They put down plans, to do this project, that project, to work on this, on that, but actually they don't have neither the competence nor the resources to do any of that. And
Yeah.
that's the trick with especially decentralization programs, is that you need to balance between participation, and effective implementation. People, they don't just come to
Yeah.
participate, they come to change their situation.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, what we're doing is that oftentimes it's the fact that upstream we didn't prepare the local municipalities to create a space for that participation to really happen, genuinely happen. It becomes
yeah,
partaking. It's a bit of it's a show, right? A show of bringing people together and giving them the impression that they're participating in local decision making. But there are no structures, no systems. Is there will to actually have them participate? That's another one. But essentially, what you're saying is that you increase their expectations for
yeah,
participation, for real engagement. But there are no tools, no mechanisms put in place to actually follow up on those in terms of
yeah,
concrete actions.
yeah, that's it,
And
that's
that
it.
actually is very detrimental because
Yeah,
I'm thinking like this is even worse than even doing this project in the first place, right? It's like don't even talk about participation if you're not going to follow up. So then the question is like, what you mentioned in evaluation, regardless of this
Yeah.
specific project, but just in general, when you do participation, what are some of the lessons learned of real engagement or at local level in a higher level decision, processes that impact not
Yeah.
only that community, but just the country as a whole?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to be honest with the participants. You try to tell them at first this is a very long process, and this is just a step in that process. So that way you actually, limit their expectations, be realistic. We are gathering here, to try to influence the process, but don't expect like when you come out of the meeting everything will be done. That will take time. It doesn't only depend on the project that we are running or the activities that we are implementing. It's larger than that. It depends on actions done by others, other actors. So you need
Yeah.
to set to set the tone realistically, and be honest with people that we are aiming to change, we are participating in change, but it doesn't mean that change would happen overnight,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
actually you need also to tell them that in order for change to happen, you need to carry on that maybe after the project, so it's just a step in a larger process, and that I think that's crucial,
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting because there are other projects that I worked on. Probably you've also, where it's a process. You bring people together to at least in the same room, people who've never talked to each other, to just kind of level the playing field and agree on areas where participation is warranted, where it's not, etc., how it can happen, right? So that's kind of preparing the field, preparing the discussions for later. So I think it's the jump that we make from, we avoid these kind of preparatory sessions of conversation, of bringing people around the table to build rapport, to build trust, then move on to the next conversation about what it is that we're trying to change. But so the question that it begs for me is, I'm assuming that work had been done at, pre-project design to say, okay, we're not going to jump in and do this. We're going to do this, right? We need to do a number of activities before to lay the foundation for conversations on actual participation. Was that done? Were people prepared, like, being honest about them, about expectations, etc., before, when I say people, participants, right, beneficiaries in those communities?
Yeah.
Was that done before, or there wasn't much groundwork done?
Yeah. Okay, I will be honest. I will speak generally, not about a specific program, but my experience from different programs.
Yeah.
Usually this work is done like doing a needs assessment, contacting the main stakeholders, meeting with them, etc. But I think there is more deeper problem. For example, when you see a project matrix, and you start seeing objectives and the theory of change, etc. It's very large, you know. It's very large, and it sets the tune to a whole bag of expectations, So, for example, in a
Yeah.
theory of change, if you find the sustainability of, I don't know, economic systems, that's a very large word. That's a whole bag of things, That's not specific enough, Well, maybe later you try to define what is this and that, etc. But on the level of the theory of change and on the level of objectives, generally they are very large, and they are very deceiving, and I understand that because sometimes aid actors, they try to sell their projects, they try to sell their projects to funders, and these funders are generally representatives of governments, state actors, and they aim for a larger change. They want really change to happen in that way or another. And I think that's a problem. That's a problem, especially with the programs or projects that have big budgets. So you have a big budget, let's say of dozens, I don't know, 20 to 50 million dollars, and you have a very big overarching theory of change. So you have, first of all, an
Yeah.
overarching theory of change that you can, insert anything in it. So a lot of expectations in it, and you have
Yeah.
a big budget. So you have a funder that's pushing you to do everything. And when it pushes you to do everything,
Yeah.
actually you end up doing not doing anything. So that's a problem. That's why
Yeah.
personally I'm starting to favor small level, small budget, small grants projects. I think they are more specific, more
Yeah.
targeted,
It's
more realistic.
Yeah, it's a catch-22 because like donors want impact, and it's true. Like beyond the fact that you overpromise in proposals, when the tenders are sent, it's a competitive process, as we know. A lot of people, a lot of organization compete for that tender. But regardless of that, because that's a larger structural
Yeah,
system
yeah,
that has so many components that we're not going to touch on right now. But there is a possibility, there is an avenue now where even donors are requesting for, are accepting that there is a progressive development of theory of change. So it's for more than like 3 year, like even 2 year projects, for 3, 5, 4 year projects, you can
yeah,
actually develop theories of change, review your theory of change based on data, even review your, probably not the goal and the objectives, those kind of tend to not change. But there are now, increasing examples where there's an organic development, an informed kind of review of the direction, so to speak,
yeah,
as the project unfolds. So that's good, despite
yeah,
all this, all the structures that are put in place that you can't change. Now, I agree with you. It'd be good to see larger projects as like deconstruct them into smaller projects where we can
exactly.
look at progress, right? Like an evolution. It's an interesting one. I've been looking into that and doing my own personal research on that, because there's if you look at the other fields, like for example in the business field, they have what they call customer journeys, and we
Exactly.
could envision for this social journey or community journey, right? Where you have different actors and you see how they will evolve as you implement the project. So that kind
Yeah,
of opens up a new space for engagement and of moving incrementally, more realistically, because
yeah,
social, when you implement in social context, it changes.
yes,
I've seen in Tunisia where you can make advances in a project and then there's one political discourse on a weekend,
exactly,
and the Monday everything has changed. All the work that
exactly.
you've done before. So that's an interesting one. Do you agree with that, or have you seen
Yeah,
it in the
yeah,
work
I
that you've
agree.
done?
I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree with that. And as I said, personally, I'm starting to favor, small level, small scale, small budget projects. I think they are
Yeah,
easier to manage, more effective, more realistic, and I don't know, more impactful maybe. So I don't know.
yeah,
I think we need to be more realistic about what we can do, as civil society or aid actors, and especially in situations where policy change is really out of reach, In some countries and in some societies, unfortunately, policy change is out of reach, for aid actors or for civil society actors. So we will not stop doing what we do. We will continue doing what we do, but I think we need to do it in smarter ways, just having very specific, very small level impacts, and let it be, let it be. It will lead to something in the future that you will not maybe be there to measure it or to see it,
Right.
but it will lead to something in the end. So that's, I think, more realistic,
Yeah.
more manageable, and even more cost effective, at some times. For example, if you have
Yeah.
one project doing it with 25 people or 20 people in, I don't know, two communities, that's more manageable, more cost effective than you have 3,000 people dispersed around the country, working in 30 communities. Imagine that. Imagine that, So, whatever. I don't know. Personally, I'm starting to favor that sort of projects, and I think even at some levels of change that are usually neglected, like interpersonal level of change, those type of small projects, they are more impactful on that level. They build interpersonal networks that really
Yeah.
lasts between the civil society and the beneficiaries, and between the beneficiaries themselves, etc. Because why? Because when you work as a civil society organization and you have, for example, two people managing the project, if you have only 10 participants in that project, you have a higher expectation that they will build more intimate and more close personal relationship with the staff of the organization than when you have 100 participants. They don't have Two people don't have the
True.
time to know 100 participants and to be in contact with them on a daily basis. But 10 participants, that's okay. So you build more
That's
interpersonal, yeah, more lasting interpersonal, networks, and that that's crucial, I think, in what we do. I think interpersonal networks and contacts are neglected in what we do, while they are really crucial in too many ways, you know in building trust,
yeah.
improving trust,
Yeah.
access, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, because this card, the social context is really critical, right? All those dynamics at play at local level. You need to understand them before you can start implementing or rolling out an initiative that calls for, massive engagement with local authorities, local civil
Yeah.
actors, political actors, etc. And all of those variables come into play, and you need to kind of balance them and know them and understand them before you can go ahead and build anything out of that.
Yeah.
I had the trump card that I didn't show you. The one that came up was inclusive. So it's
Yeah.
about inclusion, right? It's about values that involves of all stakeholders, right?
Yeah.
So that's it's part of it. I think you were saying, be inclusive and work with smaller groups, understand them, and help that grow. It's more of like participatory citizen framework where you like
Yeah.
pyramids, right? Works as pyramids. You start with 10, many groups of 10 that will then kind of reach out to 10 more, etc. And then you can
Exactly.
advance on that. And it's true, Jihed, because the interesting about the mix of these three cards is that actually policy change, we were at 8 actors who are at very local level, unless they are huge advocacy NGOs, that do advocacy at central level. But at local level and dynamics, that's a big jump, understanding this and moving into this.
Yeah, it's a
On the
big.
same token,
Yeah.
for policy change, for policy to really represent these people, you need to come down here. So it's the in between that's actually missing here, as you said, the
Yeah.
interpersonal change as well. That's important.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and it's very hard, to jump from the community level, local level, to the policy level. At sometimes you may need to go out of the community level. You may, for example, I've seen social movements here in Tunisia, for example, contesting a whole range of environmental issues in the south, you know, but they are not restricted, only to one community. It's a coalition of different communities in different organizations working in multiple communities in the south of Tunisia, and they built their platform, based on, we have a common issue, which is our environment is being degraded. We have pollution, industrial pollution. Our agriculture is being, wiped out, etc.
Yeah.
So our water resources are being wiped out,
Yeah.
etc. So they build that around a common perception, of the problem, and they started their platform that way, and it evolved, eventually, and it included at least right now 6 to 7 communities. So I think at some point, to reach that level of policy change or working toward impacting policy change, I think local organizations, they need to build coalitions, coalitions with organizations in other
Yeah.
neighboring communities that share with them maybe some of their problems, if not all of their problems. So I
Yeah.
think that kind
All of
of,
them. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that kind of inter-community work, finding the common ground with other communities and working toward a platform, representatives that would be representative of all those communities. I think that's crucial, and especially in countries in this southern, part of this world, where community and regionality, they are still very impactful. You have, either in Morocco, where you are now, or in
Yeah.
Tunisia, you have people identifying themselves by belonging to regions, and they see their regions as having similar problems and similar issues, and I think we need to build on that. Why not we have, like like a program working on a specific region, and that's it. I think it would be more impactful if a program, for example, took a region and worked on all the communities in that region, and identified the common issues that's shared within that region, and works only on that. Why not? Why? Because sometimes we try to avoid this question of regionality, to avoid tensions, etc. But it's not that. We know that what divides people can, what is a divider can be also a connector. A divider can also be a connector, and in this case, I think regionality is being
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
overlooked, out of the way, because I don't know, maybe even the category of community is a little bit North American. It's somehow North American, category, because also in our countries, how we define communities, a community is, is, it differs a lot from how an American or Canadian defines community, or because, for example, we don't have a word
Yeah.
in our dialects, Arabic dialects, for community. We speak about neighbors, ahya, we speak about jihad, regions, but we never speak about something that's community. So, why do we need to
Yeah.
have
We
this?
talk about.
Yeah, why do we need to have this
Sorry, I was going to
label?
say we talk about ethnic groups
Yeah, we
in
have
some
also ethnic
countries.
groups in some countries. Yeah, in Algeria or in Morocco. Yeah, we do have that. So why not build on the native local landscape, social landscape? Try to understand its geography and build on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Thank you so much for this conversation, Jihad. I took away, we talked about many things, but what I took away were a few words. The first one is be honest and prepare participation. How do you define it, and what will it entail? That's an important kind of lessons learned. Because of the multiplicity of actors, of groups and variables at play.
yeah,
So you have to talk about the limitations, the possible, things like that. And this multiplicity of actors and situations and variables, and they actually, it looks help, the importance. You talked about the importance of understanding clarifying the similarities, the differences, trying to build on that. You use the word common ground, building on what's common and focusing on that. You also you talked a little bit about, and this one is a very important one, is clarifying what we mean and the words that we use and how we translate some words in this field, how they're translated and the connotations, the baggage that they bring with them.
Exactly.
In both cases. So, and for us, you have done a lot of research. I've done it. When you're trying to get a concept set up, when you're trying to get out into a research and try to translate that into research questions and survey questions or focus group questions, then that's when it hits you and you really understand this, like, what do we really mean in this one? So that speaks to me quite. And then the last one, and we touched upon it a little bit, is being more realistic on objectives and maybe looking at projects more in terms of a smaller scale rather than kind of large scale project with one unchanging theory of change, unpacking the assumptions behind that theory of change and being clear about those as well. So those is kind of the main areas that, the main points that I took away from our conversation.
Definitely, you captured them well.
Super insightful, as always.
Thank you,
As
Retiba.
always, conversations with you.
It was super stimulating for me. It's as always, you get the best out of everyone, Retiba, and that's something you do very well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Rethink's Social Change podcast. I hope you got a lot of value and actionable insights from today's show. Would love if you take a minute to leave us a review. And if you work on social change and are up for the challenge, reach out. And before you go, be sure to subscribe so you're the first to know when we release a new episode. Till then, be the change.